Couple of minutes to introduce something to you. I want to tell you that this morning I woke up and it wasn't easy for me, but then again, waking up is never easy for me. I think it's the hardest part of my day. After many years of having to wake up early for shul, it's still the hardest thing for me to do. And I'm always hesitant when I do it, and I have to hit the snooze a couple of times. But I also want to tell you that when I do wake up and I go to shul and I give my class and I study and I pray, afterwards I'm really happy that I did it. And I really feel like it was well worth my effort in doing so. In all my years of being involved with teenage girls and yeshiva high school, I'll tell you that from my experience, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the hardest step in the growth of a young girl in our community to take has to do with observing modesty and s'niut. And you could also correct me if I'm wrong. What I have found is that afterwards, those girls who do take the plunge and slowly grow and take those steps, is that it's the one that they feel the most fulfilled from, the most proud of, and feel that it was well worth taking that step. 10 years ago, I approached a couple of girls in my 11th grade class who I admired a lot for being a bit different and holding up what they felt as strong values. And I asked them, hey, you want to start a club? And they said, what are you talking about? I said, let's start a s'niut club. Let's start a club where girls can feel support and girls can grow and girls can talk with each other and try to take on this challenge. And 10 years later, Baruch Hashem, we've been running our s'niut club. And our club, for those girls who don't know it, is just a matter of once a month, a number of girls getting together. We have a committee that arranges and presents these meetings and hearing from a specific topic on s'niut, getting a chance to talk and converse among each other, getting a chance to grow and a chance to learn. Our club is more than just support, it's really education. There are a lot of specific areas and angles in s'niut that people aren't aware of, and that's what we do. To be a member of this club, you really need two things. You have to be willing to grow, or want to grow, and want to learn. That's it. You don't have to be at a certain status, no one's going to check you out, no one's going to stop you at the door. You want to grow, you want to learn, you're part of the club. If you don't sign up, you can't come to the meetings. If you do, you can. Simple as that. We meet once a month. We meet in B period, which is your period of tefillah, which means that those times that we meet, you're going to have to pray at home. Make sure that you pray before you come to school. We always meet in B period. The first meeting will be next week. The girls in the committee will hand you an invitation if you sign up for the club. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll have a number of productive and inspirational meetings throughout the year. So, if you're interested in signing up, it's for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. 12th graders, please see S.D. Cohen. 11th graders, help us please see Renee Cohen, thank you very much. And 10th graders, you can see any member of our committee. Besides S.D. and Renee, you can see Esther Hannon, you can see Rachel Naftali, Jen Harari, I might be forgetting a few girls, Marilyn Tobias, and just tell them I'm interested. They'll sign your name up and you're on the committee, and we'll have the first meeting next week, God willing. Have a great day. Shabbat Shalom.
Last June, I got to speak at a girl's wedding who graduated Magen David High School. She actually had a wedding the night after graduation, and the story of basically how she met her husband had to do with how she joined this club. And she just took upon herself a small little thing over intercession, and that made her stand out a little. And her husband was from an unbelievable family, noticed her in intercession, and the day after graduation, they got married. So I'm just saying, it works. You don't have to become a whole different person. You just have to want to grow a little bit. Hey, good morning, girls. Now, here's my question for you today. If you're sitting downstairs at the lunch table, or you're sitting around the class waiting for the teacher to come, and let's say you have a brother who's a little chubby. Anyone have a brother who's a little chubby? And so you don't have to raise your hands, I don't need to know. But thank you for raising your hands, it's okay. None of my brothers are chubby. Okay. And some girl says, oh, your brother, he's like so wobbly, he's a chubby guy. And you're like, at that point you're embarrassed because 8 girls left. and you're dying to respond because you know that her mother weighs 300 pounds. And you want to say, oh really, my brother? How about your mother? That's what you want to say. My question is, in that scenario, what is the most powerful response?
Silence. Silence.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. Many of you got the right answer. But I want to tell you that this, that I'm going to say right now, is in numerous Gemaras, numerous. In Megillah, and in Chulin, and in Yuma, and in Shabbat, and in numerous places, and I have dozens of stories on this subject, and maybe a half a dozen of my own personal stories on this subject. It is very, very, very clear that the most powerful response is no response. It's very clear. Our rabbis tell us that Hanel bim ve'enam ol bim, if a person is insulted and does not insult back, they get unbelievable blessing. Forget the next world, this world. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't say something, oh, you're going to get blessing. I'm telling you, it's all over the Gemara, all over the place. And there are so many stories. I personally have had cases. I once had someone sit and shamble me for an hour. Shamble me, destroy me, insult me, anything bad you could possibly say about anybody, he said about me. I had so many things to say back, I didn't say a word. Within a few weeks, I can't tell you how many berachot and opportunities Hashem gave me. The Gemara in numerous places say a person who doesn't respond when you're in a challenging situation and you want to say something and you don't, there's unbelievable berachah right there. I'll tell you one story. It's not a personal one. Two girls who lived in Israel were non-Jews and converted to Judaism. So they converted to Judaism and they didn't realize that it's not so easy to convert. Forget about our community, but even outside the community, you're a little different, you're a little unique. You know, it's not like the first thing that a first girl a mother wants her son to marry is a converted girl. These two sisters were converted, and for years they were alone. And the hardest day of the week for them was always Shabbat, because you had to find some house to go to and some place to stay. So one week, they were eating at someone's house on Friday night, and they're sitting there at the table, and they're eating beautiful, the dishes are set, the china, the whole thing, the food, the soup comes out, the meal comes out. And as they mill the meal, the man of the house says, you know, girls, you girls converted. So why don't you tell us a little bit about life as a goy? So the girls are like, a little uncomfortable. No, we really want to hear. He said, no, but we really embarrassed. Like, no, don't be embarrassed. That's what we want to hear. You know, maybe your kids don't really want to hear anything about it's non-Jewish, Shabbat table, like what our life was like. It's not really. No, we want to hear. And the girls are like cringing. And they're like, please, can we not? He says, I'm giving you food, and I'm feeding you, and you don't want to tell me? I want to hear. The girl's now devastated. They're hysterical crying. They get up, and they start walking out of the house. So the wife of the house is like embarrassed, so she runs after them. And she's like trying to stop them, and the husband from the table yells, no. If they want to go, let them go. They don't want to tell me, let them go. So the two girls walk down the steps of the apartment. And as they're walking down the steps, they're about to leave, and then they remember they forgot to say Birkat HaMazon. So you really should go back. They said, you know, we're going to say Birkat HaMazon right here on the steps. They're saying the whole Birkat HaMazon, and then they get up to the part where you're supposed to bless the host. And they're looking at each other. Should we do this? Like, that host? We're going to bless. He just embarrassed us, insulted us, we turned colors in his house, we're hysterical crying. You know what? He gave us food. We ate at his house. We're going to bless him. And they both said the whole beracha for the host. A few days later, they were very close to a famous Rebbitzin in Israel, Rebbitzin Kanievsky. You may have heard of her. She has a book. I told you about her. They talked to the Rebbitzin. They told her what happened. They said, but should we have said, like the beracha of the guests? We really weren't happy, but we said we overcame ourselves and said it. She said, take that pain. that you had at that moment and take what you did and the fact that you were able to overcome it and right away pray to God for anything you want. Within a year, both girls were married. I'm telling you that there are so many examples of this. I think one such example of being in a challenging situation and no response is in this week's parasha. In this week's parasha, what happens? The parasha begins. There's basically two stories in Parashat Chayei Sarah. One is the sale of the portion of land from Ephron to Abraham Avinu from Me'arat HaMachpelah. And it was a hard sale. First Ephron says, I'll give it to you for free. And then Abraham says, no, I don't want it for free. You know what? This man totally took advantage of Abraham. You know, there's an expression, take him to the cleaners, like he totally wiped him out. Ephron wiped out Abraham Avinu. And the next story is a story about Yitzchak finding the wife, finding the Rivka man at the well, and so on. So the commentaries ask, like, what's the connection between these two stories? I'll tell you what I think the connection is. As Abraham was in a tough spot. Abraham was in almost a spot where he was somewhat degraded. The great Abraham Avinu was having to pay out all kinds of money. He's not even being trusted. And he didn't say a word. And immediately after, he was taken advantage of. The next story is he gets an unbelievable daughter-in-law for his son. The next pasuk, the Torah says, V'Hashem berach et Abraham b'akol. God blessed Abraham with everything. Right after he had that self-control, and right after he was in a challenging situation and did not respond, unbelievable blessing came. Now some of you might say, Rabbi, are you really telling me I'm just supposed to like take the abuse and not fight back and not say anything? Here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying keep taking the abuse. I'm not saying you're in a classroom and someone's insulting you, just say, please give me more. I'm not saying you sit down at a table and every time you sit there, the girls are embarrassing, insulting, or the boy says something, go there the next day. That's not what I'm saying. Of course you could say, excuse me, please don't say that. Of course you could get up from the table. But what I'm saying is that when you're degraded, don't degrade back. That's what I'm saying. At that moment, if you have the strength to hold it and to not respond, I cannot tell you how powerful you become. It's like Popeye eating spinach. You know what I'm talking about? All of a sudden, just your muscles become, you are now a strong and powerful person. You know, when you fight back, you can win, you can lose. When you don't, you never lose. I'm going to give you one more little personal story. Okay, a week ago, a week and change, Wednesday night, we had my son's bar mitzvah. My oldest son, you know, the guy with the bow and arrow and all that, he finally got bar mitzvah, okay? So, we had the bar mitzvah on Wednesday night, and you can imagine it was a pretty rough day because it was 2 days after the hurricane, and we can't call each other, and my wife's doing her hair, and I don't even know where she is, and like that kind of day. So finally, it's in the afternoon, and we're doing it at Avenue J Torah Center, and we're taking pictures before the bar mitzvah. So they're in the hallway taking the pictures, and I'm in the shul. I didn't get a chance to pray mincha, so I'm in the shul praying mincha in the shul part. As I'm in the shul, I hear my 1-year-old baby is in the hallway, and like I hear her crying. So they're praying, and I keep hearing God. I'm like, come on, honey. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, come on, can't you watch the kid? Like, it's disturbing the shul. Like, it's embarrassing. We're praying in here, and everyone's hearing. So I'm waiting a minute or two, and finally I say, obviously she doesn't realize what's going on in the shul. So I just didn't realize that we could hear her inside. So I walk outside to go tell my wife to quiet my daughter down. I get into the hallway and I see the whole family, my wife and all the kids are not in the hallway. A tree fell down in front of the shul, and so they were outside taking pictures. My son decided to take a picture on the tree. Okay? So my son's on the tree, my wife is taking pictures. The only one who was in the hallway was my 1-year-old daughter, whose hand was stuck in the hinges of a big metal door for 2 minutes. Because the whole time she was crying. I come over to the door and I open it up and I pull this little 1-year-old hand with his little fingers, and the dent is so deep, it's almost like there's only skin there. You could imagine what I'm thinking. Okay, it's my 1-year-old daughter, her fingers like hanging there. I don't even know, we're about to have a bar mitzvah in a half hour. There's a Hatzalah man right there, he checks it out, he says, there's a good chance this is broken. We have to call an ambulance. So he calls an ambulance. Now there's a half hour before my son's bar mitzvah, the first party we ever made. I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, what's the story with this? What's our story? Who's going to the hospital? What are we doing? How are we going to handle this? And my wife comes in, and you can imagine what I wanted to tell my wife. You know what I'm saying? Is your father ever in a situation like that? Picture your father, picture me. Okay? You got it? Rabbi Joey Haber is usually nice. Okay? And I'm thinking, she should have watched the kid. I'm thinking, and I said, but you know what? Her son's getting bar mitzvah in a half hour too. And there's nothing I'm going to gain by saying a word, so I'm not going to say anything. The Hatzalah truck comes, parked in front of the bar mitzvah. We take my daughter onto the truck. They're trying to figure out which specialist to take her to, which hospital, who's going to take her, grandma's going to take her, neighbor's going to take her, I'm going to take her. And they're like looking at the finger, we need to do a surgery, we need to, get an x-ray, see what's happening in here. I said, should we go get ice? They said, no, if you get ice, she's going to cry even more. But I'm like, if you don't get ice, it's going to swell. They're like, there's nothing we could do. We're going to take her to the hospital. All of a sudden, she stops crying. Like, hello? She stopped crying. And the Hatzalah members are like, 1 second, if she broke her finger, she'd be crying now. I'm like, even if she didn't break her finger, she should be crying now. And then before you know it, she's crawling in the Hatzalah truck. She's just like crawling around. And I told the Hatzalah members, like, do you think it's okay if we take the x-ray maybe after the bar mitzvah? They're like, you know what, if she's not crying, I guess you can. That night, I put her to bed in her crib. Opened the light, 12:30, and I just said, let me see. I opened the hands, and I could not tell which hand it was. No mark, no swelling, nothing. Like regular, I made sure she did this. I woke her up and I made her do like this with her hands, and she's playing with her daddy and the whole thing. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I am telling you, girls, text me and try me. Be in a challenging spot and want to say something and don't respond. Because when you fight back, you can win or lose. When you don't, you never lose. Shabbat Shalom.